Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wolfpacker Show. I'm your host, Ethan McDowell, and I am joined, as I am every week, by Noah Fleischman. Uh, we're here to break down NC State's loss to Louisville. If you're listening to this podcast, I'm assuming you've seen the game. It was a tough one. It was a 13-10 defeat in Carter Finley Stadium in front of a sold-out, blackout-themed night, raucous environment, but the defense did everything it could. Offense came up a little bit short. We're going to break it all down. We're going to, talk through the positives, the negatives, and, look towards the storylines that are really looming, the challenges that are becoming very real for this football team. But before we do so, just want to give a couple quick housekeeping items. We're both reporters for the Wolfpacker.com. That's a part of the On3 network. Please subscribe to our website. It is $1. It's about as cheap as it gets. And if you pay that $1, you get access to our premium message board with a fun and generally positive group of NC State fans to talk through this challenging part of the season with. And then you also get access to our premium recruiting scoops and full men's, women's basketball coverage, football coverage, and a little bit of wrestling and baseball in there too. It's going to be a fun couple months as all these sports really get going. So looking forward to it. And once again, it's the wolfpacker.com, and it is only $1 to subscribe. And the link, if you're watching on YouTube, the link to subscribe is in our bio. So check that out. Let's just dive into this, Noah. Let's not beat around the bush. That was a tough game. That was a really tough loss for NC State. That is now 3-2 on the season, 1-1 in the conference. NC State shut out Louisville in the first half. That has not been done this season by any of the prior four teams that have played the Cardinals. The Cardinals were averaging 26 points in the first half, but NC State came out with an awesome game plan. They were pressuring Plummer early and just forced him into some mistakes, just kept him off balance, and put together, in my opinion, the most complete defensive performance we've seen from this defense this season. And honestly, I'm going to go ahead and throw it out there. I think it was just as good as any performance by the 2022 defense, which is one of the best in the country. I thought last night was one of the single best NC State defensive performances in a long time. But the offense, the complementary football, which NC State preaches so heavily, the offense did not hold up their end of it. It's quite simple. And there was a lot of factors that contributed to that. We're going to dive into it. But Noah, before we do that, just kind of give us your initial thoughts on the loss to Louisville.
Yeah, I think it definitely was. I think, the best defensive performance. It's the best defensive performance, at least of this season. If you just want to base on the 2023 unit, they held Louisville without any points. They hold them to season low 20 rushing yards, total in the game, which this is a team that led the ACC in rushing. They were, averaging over 200 yards on the ground. Gerard Jordan himself was averaging 119 a game, and he finished with, I think, 30 to 35 yards. So, when you look at that, if you tell an NC State fan before the game, hey, and they're going to run for 20 yards, Jordan's going to pick up 35. You're taking that. And I think that, the defense did all it could, especially with the fact that NC State's offense went 3 and out 6 times, which made the defense go back on the field after, a pretty short drive. They didn't really get that much rest. The Wolfpack only, I think, had one drive that lasted more than 10 plays, which, that's a drive that the defense wants to see so they can catch their breath and recover. So, yeah, and then, the offense, it struggled pretty bad in the fourth quarter. I'm sure we'll talk about it, but, 12 positive yards gained in the fourth quarter and 20 penalty yards on NC State in the fourth quarter. So really -8 swing if you want to take the positive yards gained and the yards lost based on either special teams or offensive or defensive penalties. Just altogether, it's, -8 swing, and it's not going to win a game. So NC State had the game in hand, I think, in the first half, but they weren't able to really strike on that first drive of the second half, which I think would have been a big momentum shift.
Yep.
I'm sure we'll talk about that, but would have made it a 3-score game and a lot harder for Louisville to come back. But the Cardinals are 5-0, and they're that for a reason.
Yeah, and this is a good Louisville team. I think they proved that. I mean, this is a team that had been beaten teams by, putting up huge numbers offensively through the air and on the ground. And they won a tough one in Raleigh to keep their season undefeated. But I mean, like you said, we talked about it on the preview pod. Both of our predictions had Louisville scoring 30 points or more. And it seemed like this was a game where NC State would have had to reach a similar mark, reach that 31-point threshold that they aim for every week. But and I mean, shoot, Louisville was averaging way over 40 points per game this season. It was, I believe, 43 points around or something like that. That average is obviously dipped now, but even after only scoring 13 points against NC State, they're still averaging 37 points per game. So this was a high-flying offense, and NC State stopped them in the tracks. Like you said, Gerard Jordan, 16 carries, 32 yards, along of 8 against a run defense that struggled at points this season. It was not only a step forward, they took a leap forward tonight or last night. And it was really impressive to see from them. Gerard Jordan is explosive. He is a great running back, maybe the best in the ACC right now. But NC State shut them down, filled the run well, stuck to their gaps, and just completely shut down that part of their game. And Louisville averaged 0.7 yards per carry overall on 29 attempts. Like that is a incredibly impressive performance. So now you look at that and you look at, okay, they forced Plummer into 3 turnovers. And you're like, oh, okay, so the defense did literally everything it could. I do not think you could ask much more from the defense in this contest. But it was just a strange game because despite that, like NC State just could not get anything going offensively. The offensive line, which I think Noah, you mentioned before we started recording, like all their PFF grades ended up around in the 50s. And I mean, it makes sense because Louisville was really living in the NC State backfield. They ended up with a pair of sacks, 8 tackles for loss, and a couple more QB hurries. But it felt like Armstrong was just running outside the pocket, feeling the pressure constantly last night. And it's confusing because that was a unit that took some really positive steps over the past couple weeks in pass protection, especially. And the main thing I attribute that to is just, and Doran mentioned this after the game as well, is just they were behind the sticks constantly. Louisville was eating up NC State's first down rushing attempts. They had NC State had a little success running Brennan Armstrong, who once again led the team in carries by more than double the next person. He had 17. Michael Allen had 8. And Armstrong picked up 61 yards on that, averaging 3.6 yards per carry. And they had a little success using him on designed runs, but not a whole lot. And otherwise from that, it was pretty much stuffed. Michael Allen averaged 2 yards per carry. Delbert Mims averaged 2 yards. Peyton Wilson actually finished second on the team in yards per carry with his 3-yard fake punt, which that fake in the second quarter was NC State's first down that wasn't due to a penalty. They finished the first half with 86 yards of total offense. But they led 10-0, and you go into that and you're like, man, all right, like maybe NC State can make some corrections in the locker room, come out and generate some positive momentum. And we'll dive into it when we get to our turning points of the game. But like, man, it unraveled in the second half, and that's the offense going silent in the second half is starting to become a bit of a trend here, and a troubling one where the defense is setting NC State up for success and they just can't take advantage of it. So, Noah, now 3-2. Just share a few takeaways on each side of the ball. Let's start with NC State's defense. I rambled on them for a little bit, but just what did you see from NC State's defense that impressed you?
Yeah, I think the run defense really stands out. We've already, beat that horse. We keep talking about it, but I think it's really impressive. And you see them, be able to hold Louisville to, the amount of yards they did. And you look at Peyton Wilson, we talked about he did everything he could. 10 tackles, 2 sacks, defended. He did everything. I mean, Sean Brown also, for the plays that he was in the game, 8 tackles, 2 sacks for him. He got ejected on targeting, which wasn't the best of plays, but it is what it is. But, I think those two guys really led this defense, Brown and Wilson. you can also look at some of the other guys that aren't really the star players on this defense. Bishop Fitzgerald played a lot. He played really good games, 6 tackles, had an interception. You can just kind of look up and down the defense. Most of them played a good game. Some of them struggled, obviously, when Louisville found success through the air. I mean, Jack Plummer, he threw for 286. So I mean, he's an explosive guy, but they didn't let many explosive plays get behind the secondary, which I think is really important in this game, for that to happen. And he threw 2 picks too. So they got pressure on him, which I wrote about going into the game. If you get pressure on Plummer, he's not as good of a quarterback, and it paid off. They got 2 picks. They had a lot of inaccurate throws just by collapsing the pocket. I think other teams will look at it and say, hey, like if NC State can do that, I think when they're playing, other ACC teams are going to take that too. So that's the defensive takeaways. And then you look at the offensive side of the ball. Terrell Timmons, I think, is one of the only bright spots on the offensive side. He had a career high day, 3 catches, 71 yards, a really nice ball that was thrown to him by Armstrong in the 45-yard down the field. That just results in the next play was an interception. But I think that was kind of the story of the day on the offense. When they had life going in the second half, it just got ended by either 3-and-out or turnover.
Yeah, and you mentioned something that I wanted to go back to defensively. It was just that, this is a defense that did struggle to stop explosive plays for the early part of the season, but it felt like to me, and I'll go back and rewatch and really comb through to each of these big plays because they did have a decent amount of 10-yard plus plays, 10 to be exact, I believe, but it felt like those plays were not the result of breakdowns or a lack of eye discipline or a lack of communication. Sometimes it was just Louisville's receiver beating an NC State defensive back or them setting up a screen really, really well and executing it. Like you'll live with that. And usually after those mistakes, NC State would buckle down and make a huge play to turn the momentum right back around. So just a huge performance for them. Wanted to shout out the whole linebacker core in addition to Peyton Wilson, Devon Betty, and Jalen Scott. Thought they both had great, great games. Jalen Scott, especially defending the run, and Betty coming off of some blitzes and creating some really serious pressure. And it was just a complete effort. I think I've said it before, but just complete effort in just every part of that defensive performance, and especially with the injuries in the secondary, man, like hats off to NC State's defense for that. Let's dive into our turning points of today's game. I'll go ahead and start. Mine, you mentioned it, is that first drive of the second half because you come out, you hit the field goal to go into halftime, up 10-0. It was a 48-yarder by Braden Narveson that was a really good kick. It looked really great, and then you come out and Armstrong connects on his first 4 passes, including a deep one down the sideline to Terrell Timmons, who, had a great game, 3 for 71. Just he started to show some of that explosiveness that made people so excited about him as a freshman. Like he's a down the field threat, and he had a couple really, really nice and impressive grabs. But then you get in there and you get down into the red zone with a chance to extend it to a 13-0 game or a 17-0 game, and then you throw an interception. It's one that, maybe Keon Lassane had a chance at, but either way, it ends in a turnover, and that completely just reverses the momentum of the game. And that's really the last productive drive we really saw out of the Wolfpack last night. And it's a totally different game, I think, if they get points on that. I mean, shoot, they could have gotten a field goal there and not have scored for the rest of the game, and that would have been enough to keep the game tied. The defense set the bar really low for this offense to have to jump over, but it just wasn't working. It wasn't happening. Armstrong, it was a bad day for him. There's no way to, cut that differently. He had a bad day. There's a variety of factors around that. Sometimes the receivers were open, but there was too much pressure in his face. Sometimes the pass protection was good, but the receivers weren't open. And then sometimes it was him making, just unfortunate plays, bad throws. The game deciding interception was a really poor decision as he was thrown on first down, not a ball he needed to throw. And, So that's kind of where we're at. I think we're starting to see what this offense is. It's not very explosive, not very consistent, and it's you combine those two things, and that's not exactly going to lead to a lot of ACC wins. But no, what was your turning point?
Yeah, I think, that interception you talked about, right? I think that's a big turning point in the game because if you look at the numbers on that drive, it is their last, successful drive. They didn't have many, 6 3 and outs on the day. That's it's not going to help. But after that drive, which was what I think 5 plays, 60 yards, something like that, it moved the ball well, and they got down there. After that, they did not move the ball well at all. You go to, that was 6 plays, 10. You just it just doesn't work. You get turnovers and then they turn around and just go 10 yards with it. 6 plays, 10 yards, have to punt the way in the fourth quarter. You get the ball back, 3 plays, 2 yards, a minute 35 off the clock, nothing there. You get the ball again, this time you're down 13-10. And you just don't do anything with it. And then the last drive is obviously a pick. I think that's the biggest turning point, right? Because they didn't have any momentum. They killed all the momentum they were building on that drive. They were moving the ball well. They were throwing the ball well. Armstrong looked really good. He's done this in the last couple of games where there's a drive where he's inaccurate, doesn't look good, but then comes back out and is perfect. And it's like, where's this play? And I think that gives you kind of a little bit of confidence as an offense when you see the quarterback go out there and be able to hit 3 or 4 passes in a row and move this ball down the field. But they got stopped by that pick in the end zone, and then the pick at the end of the game. I think didn't need to take. It's first down. They didn't have any timeouts, but there's like a minute 45 on the clock. You can take a sack there and be okay. Where they were near midfield around like the 35, 40-yard line. You have an opportunity to take a sack. You back up 5-10 yards, but you still got to go down and score at least a field goal, so it doesn't change too much. They don't need a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
A touchdown would have been nice, I think, in that situation, but you don't need it. Then play the field goal game if they want. They've got a good kicker. So I think that was the biggest turning point, and it obviously showed in the offense. Was really sluggish the rest of the way and couldn't get anything done. Couldn't establish a run game either, which I think is maybe a concern. I mean, Doran talked about it after the UVA game.
It's
It being
definitely a concern.
but you take Brennan Armstrong out of the running game, just subtract his numbers. The last 2 weeks, the running back room has run for about 100 yards, or accounted for 100 yards between running the ball and receiving the ball. He's run for over 120 in that same stretch. So obviously the running numbers look all right when you add the quarterback's numbers in, but you take those out, the running back room hasn't done anything. I don't know what that is. We'll figure out this week of what what is causing that. But it's definitely a concern. I think the whole offense right now is probably a concern to the coaching staff, just saying like they couldn't move the ball well at all. And Kevin Concepcion, who's been the star for this team, the first 4 games didn't get anything going either. They had a little pop pass to get the ball in his hand, which I think they tried to get the ball in the playmaker's hand. He picked up some positive yardage on it. But Louisville did a good job of defending him downfield.
Yeah, and this is a little off topic and a little bit of a mini rant here. But one of the things that made this season so potentially exciting was the fact that, Robert and I was coming in as an offensive coordinator with the potential to, he has such a history getting the ball into his playmakers' hands, like tailoring an offense around not a system, but its players. And then you have KC. I mean, shoot, he had 3 targets after a breakout 6 reception, 116-yard game. I agree. Louisville just defended him well. But I think whether it's just more of those pop passes, a couple jet sweeps, shoot, I'd bring him in and motion him into the backfield and use him in a little option if they needed to. But you have to get the ball in his hands. You have to. He's been your best player offensively the entire season. So I don't really get just like what happened there. Why didn't he end up with more touches? And it's a tough outing for the offense all around, obviously. But you have one receiver with more than 2 receptions. That's just it's not going to fly. That's not going to lead to much success in the ACC. Before we head to break, just wanted to mention a quick other turning point that we'd be remiss not to mention, the running into the kicker penalty. So Julian Gray, I believe, no, correct me if I'm getting the order of events wrong here, but Julian Gray brought out a kick return, 30 plus yards, impressive return. And then NC State, their drive quickly fizzles around midfield. Then Doran decides to punt, giving the ball back down deep in their own territory. NC State defense comes up big again, forces the 3 and out. And then a very questionable running into the kicker penalty is called. Louisville's punter sold that contact. There might have been a little bit, but there wasn't much. And I know NC State fans were upset about it because, man, they did not throw that flag initially. They didn't throw that flag just a couple seconds after. They huddled together, discussed it, and then tossed the flag. That was brutal. It gave Louisville an automatic first down, and then or not an automatic, but a first down because it was 3rd and 3, I believe, and set up. Let them run more time off the clock before eventually punting it back to NC State for its final drive. Is there any guarantee that if that didn't happen, that NC State's offense would have found more success and would have, tied or won the game late in that fourth quarter? No, absolutely not, based on everything we saw from the offense in the second half. But that is still a very tough moment and a very tough call for the Wolfpack. All right. We're going to be right back with our game balls, and we're going to take a look towards, what's going to be a challenging stretch in the schedule coming up. But before we do that, just want to say a quick thank you to our sponsor, Game Time. Game Time is a ticket buying and selling marketplace. They have, from NC State football games to Hurricane hockey games to pretty much anything you could be looking for, concerts, like comedy shows, anything. It's all on the Game Time app, or you can find it at the gametime.co. It's not .com, that's .co. And, if you're like me, Noah, you wait to the last second to buy tickets, and then you're like, crap, these tickets are way more expensive than I thought they were going to be. That's not ideal. Well, Game Time has those tickets, available right up until kickoff. And it's really nice, and you can find them all in their easy-to-use app. You log in, they sort it by price. And my favorite thing about the app by far is that when you open it up, you can see the exact view from your seat. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to hold my phone up to the screen so you can see. But look, this is for the NC State UNC game in November. You can see exactly where you'd be sitting. Right now, the cheapest ticket for that game is $117. So, that's a hot ticket, that big rivalry game in November. So go check them out. And on your first purchase, use code Wolfpack. It's all caps Wolfpack. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. So that brings the price for the UNC ticket down under $100. It makes it a little more affordable there. But check it out, the Game Time app. It's gametime.co, and use code Wolfpack. All right, Noah, game balls. It was, a difficult loss, very tough. We talked to Terrell Timmons, Peyton Wilson after the game. They talked about how this is just going to be one of those losses where the team needs to stick together. Like it's easy for a team to, point fingers after a loss like this. But they both, one player on each side of the ball, emphasizing that, finger pointing, that's not going to happen. They're going to stick to that. And, it helps when you have a strong leader like Peyton Wilson in the locker room and the rest of those captains and Dylan McMahon, all those guys. So, there are positives to take away from the game. Maybe not many in NC State's fans' eyes, but Noah, for you, just one of your game balls, who do you want to recognize as a player of the game for the Wolfpack?
Yeah, I really think Sean Brown deserves it. Obviously, he got disqualified in the third quarter due to a targeting call that was targeting, but could have been let go at the same time. It wasn't a
Yeah.
egregious targeting penalty, but
Yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to touch on that. It's like I saw a lot of outrage for the call, and I agree it shouldn't be targeting. Like that shouldn't be a hit that gets someone disqualified from a game and potentially suspended for the first half of the next game. But it's consistent with the way it's refereed nowadays. Like you do that, it's going to be targeting. every time at this point. So just making that clear, it's consistent with how it's officiated nowadays in college football. Should it have been a penalty that lost NC State's one of their best defensive backs for the rest of the game, having the game of his life? No, absolutely not. No, sorry, no. Keep going.
Yeah, I mean, just wasn't, an egregious targeting. It's not one of the ones you see immediately on the field and you're like, targeting. But it just fits the definition technically of what the NCAA wants to limit happening, and it's for the safety of both players on the field. So, you can't, blame. But he was, I think was the best player on the field at the defense at the time, just with how he's playing, 2 sacks, strip sack in there. He was playing really well. So I think a game ball goes to him. Sean Brown, especially in the safety room that has, been banged up all year, he kind of steps up to the plate and plays really well against a team that's going to, make safeties play well. So I think that was, game ball number 1 in a game that wasn't pretty in NC State's favor.
Yeah, and he's one of those guys where it's like, wow, he is taking such a step forward. Like, he had some rough spots early in the season when he took over that starting role, but man, he's just improved so much week to week, which has been really cool to see him steadily improve into a really, really solid player in NC State secondary. My game ball, first one is going to go to Peyton Wilson. I mean, shoot, like what else is there to say at this point? We talk about him every week on this segment of the show at this point. But this week I am using it as a chance to start his campaign for ACC Defensive Player of the Year. He is having an awesome season against Louisville, 10 total tackles, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, and another one of those pass breakups where he just recognizes he can't get to the quarterback, and then he stops and bats down a pass, saves a big play. And that's just, it's the awareness that a player's experienced as him knows how to make those plays. And it was impressive. He just continues to improve more and more and more. And I mean, shoot, he even carried the ball on that fake punt. He recovered Sean Brown's fumble as well, forced fumble, right? Yeah. So just an incredible game for him. And let's go through his season stats so far right now. It's 56 total tackles, and 27 of those are solo tackles, 2.5 sacks, 1 fumble recovery, 1 interception, and 3 defended passes. He is well on pace to surpass his marks from last year in pretty much every statistical category. He's, knock on wood, healthy and playing just at a super high level, leading the pack on and off the field. Just, what a game from him. What a season so far. And just, he looks like he's putting a cap on a career of one of the best defensive players in NC State history with this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think he is. He also, if you look at the ACC numbers, obviously he's played 1 more game than everyone else in the ACC since they're playing today, but he leads the ACC in tackles right now with 56. Next closest is 41, which is Keely Lawson from Virginia Tech. So he's doing something right. He's playing well. His impact on the field is a lot greater than the tackles. It is off the field too. He spoke to the team right after the game, trying to rally them together. I mean, this is kind of the turning point, I think, in the season. We talked about it before. It's like if NC State wins against Louisville, it's like, they're feeling really good at themselves. I feel like they can play with almost anybody in the ACC. If they lose, you have a chance to, lose the team a little bit. And I think that he's kind of trying to, keep the team together. They don't want to lose the locker room, lose interest from players. Because once that happens, it just snowballs and just becomes, not a good year. And at NC State, that's not acceptable, right? The standard is to play well and, have, 8, 9, 10 win seasons. And right now it's a long way to get to, 8 wins, I think, this season. But it's a doable thing. It's just going to be a rough road. I'm sure we're going to talk about that soon. But I think, that he deserves a game ball, not only for his play on the field, but, for what he did, in the locker room after the game. But, if I was to give another game ball out, I think Terrell Timmons deserves one. A career day, the only bright spot in the pass game too, receiving game. I think there's not a whole lot more you can say other than, he played really well. This is a week after, Virginia. He was running a really nice route down the field and just got lit up. And I thought, it was going to be a serious injury. Seems like he was just winded, came back and was fine. So I think he's a tough guy, and he's kind of showing what NC State recruited him for.
Yeah, and my last game ball is I'm gonna give it to Rakim Ashford because once Sean Brown went out of the game, I thought Rock came in and did a really good job. He had a half of a tackle for loss, another quarterback hurry. I thought it wasn't a noticeable drop off, and I thought he played really well filling in and first major time back since that scary injury at UConn. We talked to him this week. And he was clearly excited to get back on the field. So was happy for him, happy to see him back out there and, making some plays. All right, before we wrap up today, Noah, let's look towards the rest of the season. And I wrote about it in our post-game column up on the wolfpacker.com. I think at this point in the year, we're almost halfway done with the season. I think we know what NC State's offense is going to be. And it's not going to be the offense that complements an elite defense well enough to reach the heights that NC State came into the season wanting to reach, that 9-10 wins ACC championship contender level. I think it's an understatement to say that last night's offensive performance, even the performance against UVA, it's not going to get the job done. I mean, right now NC State's 3 wins are against 3 teams that have won a combined 1 game, I believe.
Yeah.
So, there hasn't really been a quality win this year. Louisville was a perfect opportunity for it. The defense put them in position, like we've said 10 times on this podcast, but the offense couldn't reach that. And if that is what the offense is this season, and we don't see dramatic improvement in some area, then it's going to be tough sledding for the rest of the year when you're staring down a schedule where you've got, Duke, Clemson, and Miami all in a row coming up. Those are 3 teams that, not Clemson less so, I guess. They've already lost 2 conference games, but Miami and Duke are racing for a spot in the ACC championship right now. So tough schedule down the stretch. It's a lot at home. So like we saw last night, Carter Finley Stadium, it's an advantage. But, you look down the schedule and you're at 3 wins right now. I think you probably chalk in the Marshall game as a win, but it's not even a guarantee. Marshall just beat Virginia Tech. So now you're looking at like how many wins are there on there? NC State's going to have to bring their A game for pretty much every game for the rest of the season. And once again, I think it's an understatement to say that yesterday was not their A game. Was at least offensively. So dramatic improvement has to come from somewhere, and I don't know where that's going to come from. Maybe the pass protection and run blocking gets a little better once Dylan McMahon's back. But I don't think they were really dominating in those areas when he was healthy either. So maybe some marginal improvement there, and maybe that just leads to a little more consistency offensively. But I don't see the run game or the pass game improving dramatically moving forward. I know, no, we can have the conversation. Let's talk about the quarterbacks.
Yeah.
It was a brutal game for Brennan Armstrong. Doran backed him in the post-game press conference, and I don't think we're going to see a quarterback change. I'm going to put that out there. I do not think it's going to happen. I think Brennan is a 4th most leader of this football team. He's a captain. I think Doran trusts him. But I just don't see them making a change soon. I think it would have to be a couple more games of similar performances or worse to lead to, MJ Morris, getting in the game. And it's a tough situation because, we don't know how well MJ's been practicing, right? We don't know if he's, absolutely tearing up, the starting defense every week and, all of that stuff, or maybe he's on the same level or not playing as well as Brennan. We have no idea. But we know what we saw from him last year, and that has a lot of NC State fans clamoring for him to get some playing time. I'm a big fan of MJ Morris's game, but I don't think we're going to see him playing a major role yet. Noah, just from what you've heard in the press conferences, from just the overall vibe you've gotten, just your thoughts on NC State's quarterbacks going forward.
Yeah, obviously, He's not going to say much after the game yesterday. Dorn said literally, open the press conference was basically saying there's a lot of questions you want answers to that I don't have right now, just because he needs to watch the film. I think Monday's press conference will show us a lot of what he learned from this game because, 2 days of watching film and then diagnosing what went wrong helps in that. When you look at the quarterback situation, it's interesting because Dorn is on the record saying he doesn't want to play MJ Morris unless he absolutely has to. And right now, he doesn't absolutely have to because Brandon Armstrong is on the field and healthy and has experience in playing college football. I think there is a way that Dave Doran can preserve that red shirt and get him on the field at the same time. With 4 games to go, if they want to make a move, that's when you make the move because you can play up to 4 games and maintain the red shirt and appear in a bowl game and maintain the red shirt. So if you look at the schedule that NC State has coming up, Marshall this week, Duke, Clemson, Miami, Wake, Virginia Tech, UNC. 4 games left starts that Miami game. Miami, Wake Forest, Virginia Tech, UNC. Of those 4 games, 2 of them are winnable. Wake Forest and Virginia Tech with the way that their offense is playing right now. If the offense takes a big jump, those other 2 games become a game. If you're going to play a young quarterback, you don't want to play him in games the team's gonna get absolutely lit up if the offense doesn't change. Clemson, the defense is really good. If the offense doesn't change, it's not going to be a pretty game. You don't want to hurt somebody's confidence that way. So I think if you make the move, they make it either for the Miami game or for the following week at Wake Forest, which I think is probably the best case scenario because Miami's a really good team right now as well. But I think that's when the move would happen if they want to do it. Because this is Armstrong's last year. If you want to look toward the future, say they sit, what would the record be if they get there? They're 3-2 right now. Marshall this weekend, very good Sun Belt Conference team. They beat Virginia Tech this year. They beat Notre Dame at Notre Dame last year, so they're a quality team. So you say you beat them, Duke, Clemson, Miami, that could be 3 straight losses, and that's sitting at 4-5. Yes, like math is sometimes hard for me, but 4-5 with 3 games to play. Do you play young quarterback there and just say, start developing for the future? Or do you try to win those last 3, go 7-5 and play in a decent bowl? I don't know which way you go. You could win with MJ Morris. Everyone likes MJ Morris. I haven't heard anyone say anything bad. Even, Dave Dorn, they like him. There's a reason why they want to redshirt him so they can get him for 3 full years, which, you could see why. But I wouldn't expect a change this week. But expect if they do make the change, Wake Forest is the prime opportunity to do it. It's a winnable game on the road. He's played on the road before, so it's not like going to be the first time MJ Morris is away from home. I believe he's played on the road, last year. He's played well as a freshman. He's been in the offense now and been in college football for more than what he did last year. So I would target Wake Forest if they're going to make the change. I kind of set that as the date. But if the offense takes a jump between now and then, I wouldn't anticipate seeing it. But I think if it stays stagnant, you got to shake something up eventually. If NC State wants to keep a bowl in its sights.
It is kind of a situation where something does need to get shaken up eventually, but where does that come from? And the easiest place to point is always the quarterback, I feel.
Yeah.
So my guess is they'll try a couple different things before that, and then if it doesn't work, like you said, that late stretch of the season, maybe we see something. But yeah, just if you're listening to this and you're expecting MJ Morris to start next week against Marshall, I'd temper your expectations. I don't really see that happening this week. But all right, we'll be back later this week to preview the matchup with Marshall. We're back on our regular schedule. It'll be Saturday at 2 p.m. at Carter Finley against the Thundering Herd. And, we'll have the preview podcast up Thursday morning like we always do. And we'll break that matchup down fully. Group of 5 team, but a strong group of 5 team. So it'll be an interesting one. All right. Thank you all for listening for the, 40-minute recap here. I hope this kind of helped put some context on a tough loss. And always, leave a like or review. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're listening on YouTube. We're also available on all streaming platforms. Check us out there as well. And check out our website, thewolfpacker.com. It's only $1 to join for premium access to our message board and all other premium content. All right. I'm Ethan McDowell, and I'm with Noah Fleischman. Thank you all so much for listening.